Good afternoon, Mr. Todd Medina. The second time coming on the Joe Butler podcast. It's been a long time since I spoke to you. We spoke in June.
Oh, wow.
So that was when I first started my podcast, and you were my first guest.
Oh,
And so
really?
then some time since we have spoken. And just like yourself, I have been on a very inward journey since the end of October. So I haven't even had a podcast since then, since October 30th, actually.
Wow.
So I have been watching, I always watch you, but the last few days, your little Todd Medina interviews with self have
Mhm.
really resonated with me in a deep way to make me come back out, because I think we're on parallel journeys as we all are. And I just wanted to really dive into all that with you.
Okay. Yeah,
I
I'm up
wanted to
for it.
really see, yeah, I really wanted to see where you're at. I mean, I kind of know, but I want you to share some depths of that because the vulnerability that you've been stepping into has been very, very powerful, very,
Mhm.
very tangible, and it's really resonated with my heart. So I
Wow.
want to get into that. And thank you for that, by the way.
Yeah, sure. Thank my soul because I haven't really wanted to do it. I think I've done three. I've done three. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't even know where to start, but that used the word vulnerability, but I think it's yeah, that's definitely something that is kind of a prerequisite to transparency. And I feel like that transparency is we're really what we all are, or what we're headed to. Because I mean, telepathy, if we're going to have full blown telepathy, and anyone that's had any type of dimensional experience or whatever you want to call it, be it a um, just a divine episode or whatever you want to call it, and had an encounter with another entity, be it a human being, more likely not, where there's telepathy, it's just everything's on the table. So I'm just being pushed to, when I get on, really through my whole, career, I guess you would say, this part, what do you call this? The whole podcasting thing or doing lives.
Yep.
I've done a lot. I mean, I've done 4,500 Soul Speaks 5Ds. I've done probably another 1,500 to actually, yeah, 1,500 to 2,000, maybe other types of video productions. I never really plan anything. Um, I find that the spontaneous is really a powerful thing. I've learned this over the years, but it's become more and more powerful. So, on the show, I would always say, yeah, we're going to have a conversation and it's going to be spontaneous, intuitive, creative, imaginative, and depending on what we're talking about, are doing courageous. So I really feel like that those five things, of course, obviously with pure intention, and openness, and there's other adjectives and attributes we could add to it, but I really feel like that's what we're becoming, and embodying, uh, you know, embodying is a really a big word that's used a lot, and I think it's a really broad kind of um, description that covers a lot of things. But so anyway, these three that I've done, these interviews with self, soul, human soul. It's really my, um, I guess, my understanding that I'm attempting or moving the direction of um, uh, kind of bringing the human and the soul to one voice. And so that's kind of weird because I feel like it's just like a microcosm of what we're all doing is actually becoming, you could say, becoming our soul in form, our higher self in form, and that we're basically, as the days go by, uh, we're basically having conversations soul to soul. And in order to do that, the human um, becomes more and more transparent. So I didn't really know, the first time I've done three of them, and the first one, I just understood that, you need to talk about your journey, not to bring attention to yourself so much or to the story itself, but to basically provide a reflection for others. So it's really not what I'm talking about or the fact that I'm talking about my own story. It's really more about being open and uh, kind of exemplifying, not that I'm anything special or anything, but just kind of showing the way. I keep hearing from my soul, somebody's got to start this thing, somebody's got to go first. And that's kind of how Soulgy has gone, and my whole tenure in social media has always been to just be kind of raw, unpolished, not produced, with a bunch of spit and polish and bells and whistles, but just to show up and turn on the live. That's why I love lives, because once you turn it on, you don't really have a choice. You got nothing to lose. So I did the first one, and it was a little bit. I was a little bit nervous, which doesn't really happen to me, and the second one and the third one as well. But in all three cases, I didn't know what I was going to do. I just was told just do it. So I clicked the live, and then I just started talking, and I feel like it's um, like I said, I feel like it's an attempt or moving in the direction of having a singular voice of the human and the soul, rather than, that's why, like I said, I'm interviewing myself. I mean, on the first episode, I said, when did you wake up? And that's the only question I've asked in all three. So I don't know if it's really an interview of myself, but I spent that whole first episode just answering that question. And then the second one came on, and I just turned on the live, and I don't even know. I just started talking. So I didn't really ask myself any more questions. But yeah, that's kind of where the spirit of it is to uh, just provide a reflection, um, kind of like what you're talking about. Like you were dormant, I was dormant pretty much for me, because I was used to doing, 60 to 80 shows a month for years and years and years. And then around the summer, around the time that you did your first podcast that I was on, I started to expand the Sology Network, and offer people a platform to produce their own shows. So we had 22 people come in and do that. And then as a result of that, and because I was having to produce every single show, right? Every single show, every week, 20, 25 shows. In addition, I was doing, my shows, and then it kind of just, I wasn't able to keep up that pace, and I kind of got burned out. And I think it kind of coincides with what you're talking about with yourself and with other people that come around the end of October, something happened. Like,
Yeah,
like,
I really I feel like it it was it was an inner journey, and it had to be alone, and it had to be, a lot less socialization and a lot more of looking at self. And I do feel like it literally is, a merging of all of our lives, our past lives, and it's all kind of like come down to one, which is the oneness that we are all experiencing. So it's very interesting because it's like on one hand, it's, we still have a person, we're still a physical being incarnate with, a personality that's attached to it. But I can tell with you, and I feel with myself, I'm less and less connected to the personality, and I'm more and more connected to the allness in
yeah,
everything that I do. Everything that I see and I feel and I be is through the lens of the allness, which
right.
is such a, it just to go through that metamorphosis and this is why I wanted to come on, and this is why I wanted to bring you on, is I want people to understand they're not going crazy. It's
Right,
just this huge transformation of
right,
literally letting go and releasing all of that that was yesterday, and
right,
truly being in that moment. And in the esoteric spiritual world, that's all people talk about: live in the moment, live in the moment. But it literally is just
right,
that.
right. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's really where it's at is, we did spend a lot of time and still do from time to time, apparently, uh kind of detaching from the past in the sense that it was weighing us down, or the traumas, or whatever the case was, the programs or the conditioning. And we spent a lot of time doing that, kind of untethering ourselves from the past. But then by the same token, uh, untethering ourselves from the future, like, what our plans are and how it's going to go, and expectations and such,
Yeah.
to where we're planted into the present moment. And so I think, like, as far as these three self interviews have gone, I feel like that's, you know that's what it is. So I've always wondered, you know in previous years, as this thing's been evolving in regard to Sology and what I do. We had this schedule, and the schedule would be 4, 5, 6 weeks, out, and 40 or 50 shows scheduled in front of us at specific times, and set up and coordinated, and so on. And I used to say, I think the day's going to come where we don't even schedule anything. And so I kind of feel like that's the case. I got back on the horse like maybe about 3 weeks ago, and I just hit up a friend of mine. I just kind of put a list of people together and sent out 3 or 4 messages. And a really good friend of mine, Kirsty Lee, we've done a lot of shows together. I hit her up, and I'm like, "Hey, you want to do a show? I'm getting back on this horse. I'm going to start doing Soul Speaks 5Ds." And she says, "Yeah, when you want to do it?" I said, "Look, I can do it right now." So she goes, "Okay, I'll see you in 30 minutes." So that's what we did. And I kind of liked that. And then we had a spirited conversation, and it was spontaneous, and so that kind of set the tone. But these three that I've done, again, I didn't know exactly. I did know on the first one that, hey, you need to talk about your story. And that's really kind of all I knew. And then it just popped in my head, well, just interview yourself. I'm like, okay. And again, I just asked myself the one question: when do you wake up? When did you wake up? Which is the famous question I asked, on all the episodes over the years when I would start a show out, when did you wake up, or have you always been this weird, just to kind of break the ice. And so, but going back to what you're saying about not feeling crazy, not feeling weird, not doubting ourselves. I feel like that in telling our stories now, uh, that we're on the other side. Okay. And I'll go back to that in a second. I feel like that it's a different kind of thing telling our story now versus prior to what I call the pop. And I think the pop occurred on or around 11/11 this past year, November the 11th. Um, and so I feel like that, prior to that, prior to the pop, prior to coming over to the other side at a conscious level of awareness, that really, and I can speak for myself, that, yeah, there was more of the personalities, the identities, the egoic, I would say the wounded egoic, the programmed egoic. And what I mean by that is, in telling our stories prior to the pop, there was some victim consciousness. There was some egoic, like, hey, I can do this and I can do that. Let me show you. And now I think it's turned into the other side of the pop where, hey, I'm Todd Medina. Um, I'm only going to be Todd Medina one time. Obviously, um, I'm much more than that, just as you are. Um, but let's go ahead and now look at the value of, like in my case, Todd Medina. What does his journey have to offer? And really, the common denominator to be seen that we all share, we often forget, I think, or maybe we're starting to remember, uh, we all know that we're soul. We all know we have that in common. We all know that we're eternal. We all know that we've had past lives. We all know that we have psychic abilities. Everything's starting to expand and come online. But what does Todd Medina's journey or anyone else's journey have to offer? And I don't think so much it's in the story, although I think those things are interesting. I think it's in the like the vibrational resonance of the journey, like the keys and the codes of a person's transformation and what that looked like at the boots on the ground level. But just going back to, for myself, and it's interesting that you said you kind of like turned it off on October the 30th. So for me, in August, the summer was hot. It's been hot every the last 3 years. I mean, I said the summer in the Northern Hemisphere, things seem to ramp up in the summer, and it did for me as well. And a lot of people were going through a lot of things. And of course, obviously, I've been in a relationship for over 8 years with Morgan Lee, and we actually separated in August for 11 and a half weeks and literally, let go and detached, as we've all been doing with relationships and residences and jobs and so many different things, and letting go in totality, which is a
Mhm.
scary thing. And this is another thing that we can all talk about because we've all done it. But
Yes.
just for the sake of what we're talking about, I went through this period of 11 and a half weeks, and it was a bit strange and felt kind of weird. But on the in the Northern Hemisphere, on the 8th of November, which was actually the 9th of November in the Southern Hemisphere where Morgan lives, I woke up from a bunch of lucid dreaming, and as soon as I woke up, I heard, "You're on the other side now. You all are on the other side now." And everything is back there, and none of it
Mhm.
can hurt you. None of it can touch you.
Mhm.
It's like just wipe the slate clean. That happened for me on what was 9/11, and the 9th of November. 2 days, and what I did that day was, I knew I needed to start with Morgan. So I sent her an email, and I didn't have any, any um, objective other than to just find a greater peace and bring equilibrium. I wasn't looking to get back with her. It wasn't just, I'm going to reach out. And so she was a bit shocked, and we exchanged some messages, and then we had some video calls. 2 days later, on 11/11, I think we all know that was a very powerful day. And if I look back over the last few years, 11/11 always seems to start things. It's almost like the preseason, or I don't want to say the beginning of the new year, because I think there's some uh you know something to be said for when does the year start. Last year I kind of got the boom on March the 1st, and I was told, this is actually the first day of the year. I didn't know what that meant, but if you look at the prefixes of these months, you can see that they're 2 months off. So if you look at, for instance, December, that's a 10, but it's the 12th month. You know what I mean? So,
Mhm. Mhm.
I don't know why I even went there, but just to say that 11/11 always seems to be like
Well,
the
you're
preseason starts or something like
you
that.
you're connected to Archangel Michael, and the angelic number is always 111. So you're
Right.
very connected to that. And I wanted to let you know in this podcast that me and you have so many parallels. Because I got woken up with my very first awakening experience in my 20s with Archangel Michael. And
Mhm.
I also have been homeless for a month of my life, not nearly as long as you. But it was also by choice, through an experience I went through with a partner. And it, you know, every time I hear you go back into certain stories, I think of how many parallels we have. We're both Sagittarians as well.
Mm,
So I didn't realize any of this when I first started watching you years and years ago. And then as time has gone on and I've watched more things and learned more about you, I've heard those. But definitely that 1111 is definitely, I know that I had a very powerful activation on 111111. Like that was one of my most powerful activations in this incarnation, was on
mm.
that particular date. And I know from talking to so many people that that was a big date for a lot of people. And I know you also went through a lot on that date as well. You had some transformational experiences on that date.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, it always seems like that. It seems like some of the big dates would be like 11/11, then 12/12. And I'm looking back at the last few years, 1/1 of the new Gregorian
Mhm,
calendar, January
mhm.
1st, January 11th. Um, the
Well, yeah,
dates would,
they're just like you said with codes. They're sequences. They're
right.
sacred geometry. So all of those things are programmed into our system, and so there's power in them for sure. Just like ley lines, it's all connected.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and going back to kind of the buildup, you talked about kind of shutting down October the 30th. I
Hmm.
guess in a way, the same thing kind of happened to me. I mean, the reunification of her and I coming back together was a very powerful thing. We had a third Sology Fest in 3 years, the weekend of December 8th, 9th, and 10th. And so everything like kind of culminated and concluded with that Sology Fest. Because for the last,
I watched some of that when you
yeah,
live, yep, when you had it
I do.
on. Yep.
Yeah. I'm gonna put that out in totality. I have it all right here. But for me, it kind of started and I think it's important. I think really, if we go back to 2020, it really started with with COVID.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm not going to say it was COVID, but my understanding with COVID was that obviously there was this in the narrative in the movie that we're all in. It was put forth with certain intention. We
Hmm.
know this, and I'll try to be careful because I don't want to get you censored. But
Hmm.
energetically speaking, it was the greatest gift we could give ourselves because it literally accelerated the wake up experience for so many people. And we're seeing sheer evidence of that now. So 2020 was kind of like that's when it started in March, I remember. Um, and uh, and so it took about a year. I think a lot of people were like, because really they didn't the mandates and all that stuff really didn't. It really kind of started to really climax about a year later, and so it was about then um, yeah, the rules and everything started to change. Morgan needed to go back to Australia and take care of some things, and literally landed in the mandates, in the restrictions. Literally got off the
Yeah.
plane,
Big
gets off the
time.
plane, and there's a line of military and police forming like two lines, and they had to walk through this
That's
whole kind of
intense.
gauntlet thing. And so that kind of started. And what happened was about 2 months later, after two, and I'm sorry, about yeah, so 2021, yeah, she'd been gone. I'm getting confused now. But what I'm saying is that in 2021, I was given direct orders, guidance, direction from what I would call the mother goddess, right? Which has always been the most prominent thing. I remember talking to Sandra Walter the last time she was on my show, and I was telling her this, and she said to me, "Well, when the mother speaks, you just got to go do it," and that's true. I was like, "Wow, yeah, she understands like where I'm coming from." So the mother kind of put me on this mission, and the first one was a Soulsy Fest in Sedona in 21, and then in 22, I left our home that Morgan and I had. Well, I had been there 2 years, 1 year with her, 1 year without. And I was told, you got to get out of this house. You got to go. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And like, oh, you're going to go have a Soldier Fest on a mountain in Arkansas. I'm like, oh my God, we got like 9 weeks notice. Are you serious? So there was this other thing. I got called back to Sedona by the mother, had all these extraordinary things happen. I should probably talk about those on these self interviews because they were quite extraordinary. So many things happened, so many incredible things. So 22 was Arkansas, and then 23 was here in Houston where I live, which again was not planned, but was all guided by the mother. So there was this whole thing about, you know, you need to go and do this. Just go do this. Someone's got to make it happen. Go do it. Um, no matter what. Don't look back. Even if I tell you to stop, don't stop. Just go. That's what she told me. And so this was 21, 22, and 23, and it culminates with this Trilogy Fest in Houston. At the same time, 9 months into launching the network, and all the energy that took, having to produce every show and so on and so on. So as a human being, by the time, and by the way, my birthday is December the 9th, which was the Saturday of the Soldier Fest, which wasn't planned either. Okay. So there were all these encodements, like you were talking about, all this
Yeah.
geometric and semantic and mathematic encodement that was occurring. And, I'm aware of this stuff and so on. But what happened to me, and in that time, I should say as well, in May of 23, I reunited with my mother, where I'm at now.
That's the
I had
ultimate culmination of mother energy, your
exactly.
physical mother incarnate. So that
Yeah.
was a huge closing
Yeah.
of a chapter to do that karmic deed of reconnection and rebalance. So that's very
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah. It was really amazing because we hadn't spoken in 6 years. And it just so happened that I ended up back in Houston. That wasn't planned. I'm staying in my daughter's apartment because she moved out, so I just sublet it for the all of 2023. It was one block and two houses over from my grandmother's house in a suburb called Montrose. I was walking the streets where I'd been homeless. Here I am, 12 years later. 12 was everywhere. The 12 grandmothers were coming in, 13 grandmothers, depends on how you look at it.
You were
Uh,
born on the 12th month. So yeah,
12th
so
month, yeah,
definitely
12th month,
all your ancestral loopings were coming back together for
yeah,
reunification right in the middle.
yeah. So all of that culminated, the reunification with the mother after 3 years of following the mother's guidance, moving back in, or actually she was in senior living, moved her into her home. She was about to sell it. I said, look, why don't we just go back to your house? And here I am in the same, there's a big room in the upstairs in the back of the house that I came off the streets and came and lived in 12 years prior. Same time frame, same month and
Yep.
everything. And
Yeah.
where I made the
Yep.
first Sology video in 2013, right, was right here in this room. And so here I am, like, so I'm seeing all these things, and I'm walking the same streets around my daughter's area, which is about 9 miles from here. There's a bayous that run all through Houston. A lot of my homeless time was spent on the bayous. I talked about it in this series I've been doing with the self interview. So I found the culmination of the reunification with the mother, kind of like the tearing down and reunification with, my partner. Uh, the
Yeah.
kind of like the tearing down of Sology and rebuilding from the ground up. A third Sology Fest. There's a number three happening on my
Mhm.
birthday weekend, which is crazy. Which is on the 9th. So all this 3, 6, 9, 12 stuff. Get to the end of it. Took the last person to the airport probably 3 or 4 days after that, like say the Wednesday after that, like maybe around the 13th, 14th. And I was just depleted. Like I literally felt like I'd felt this level of depletion right before everything turned upside down when I got that big download and reawoke and the cosmic Christ came through the trees I talked about in that first solo. um, I had felt that level because at that time I was like physically, mentally, emotionally just gone, you know. So I ended up on the streets and had to work through all that trauma and all through this PTSD type thing. And so what happened was I went through it and I'm like, man, I don't know if I can do this anymore. So I set a date for January the 8th. We'll get the show started back on Solo G Network. We're taking a 2 month hiatus. I just can't do it anymore, you know. But then the 8th came, or before the 8th came, 2 days before on the 6th. My parents have been divorced for 40 years or something like that, 40, 50 years. And I'm obviously with my mother. She has what we came to find out was a UTI infection. We didn't know what was going on. So I took her to the hospital on the 6th, I mean, on the 6th of January. We're in the emergency room, and one of my siblings sends me a text that my father's had a stroke and he is in the emergency room. And he has had a stroke and at that time was paralyzed on his left side. My mother was having extreme pain on her right side. So my father's having this situation with his feminine side. My mother's having it
Yeah.
with her, and then we have all this drama and trauma and chaos and BS with the siblings and all this stuff that goes on in families, this dysfunction and disconnection. And I'm watching all this energy kind of congeal, and at the same time, my human's like, how the hell am I going to get on here and start doing shows again? I can't even, I can't even comb my hair. You know what I mean? So I
Mhm.
put it off for another week. I communicated with the collaborators and said, oh, we'll be back next week. And for those of you who want to come do a show, we're going to get it going and so on. But again, just I couldn't do anything. And so from around the 15th or so of January up until, so that would be like, say, 3 weeks. I didn't say anything. I didn't talk to anybody. I just sat here and thought, what am I doing? What am I going to do? How's this going? And then I would say the day that I did the first self interview, which was maybe a week ago, I woke up and it was a lot like 9 November. Uh, I woke up that morning hearing, you're on the other side now. None of that stuff can touch you. Boom, boom, but this was a little bit different message. This message was, okay, it's time to go to work. And the other thing I would add is that over the last couple of weeks, the father energy has really come in a really huge way. Now, when I first reawoke in May 30, 2011, obviously the consciousness of, well, first of all, it was Archangel Michael. And I could share this story with you real quick because it's really interesting. I should have brought it up on, maybe I'll do it on the next one. So I had this experience with the Cosmic Christ on May 30th at 1:11 in the morning that I talked about. And anytime that I have like a epiphanies or revelation, or you might call it uh, jumping timelines, the past and the present and the future always merge. And so when that
Yeah.
happened, there were certain things that had happened in the prior 2 years that kind of fell into place. And I went, oh, 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 you know how that works. So the first leg of the spirit walk was 7 months. And I just walked and, mostly walked around, and I would, sometimes sleep, outside, and sometimes I'd sleep on a friend's couch, or every now and then get a hotel room for a night or two. So it was in December. It was in December of 2011. So it'd been right at 7 months. And I had rented a room from a friend of mine. And so, and I'd gone through 7 months of walking the streets and many different types of divine episodes, some of that I described in the three self interviews that I did. But on this particular night, there was a huge uh, presentation of energy. I'll just describe it like that without getting into stories and all that. A really a big one that was offering me a choice to hang on to what I had or go back to what I had, uh, or to stay on this crazy path of walking the streets day after day after day.
And this was
Um,
through Archangel Michael came to you with this message?
yeah, but let me tell you how it happened. Now I had been being spoken to quite a bit, but I wasn't really listening. Um, I didn't understand. I didn't have the wherewithal to understand everything. I knew something was going on. Obviously, there was some things happening, uh, but it was kind of like, wow, am I crazy? Like you were talking about. So I
Mhm.
was with my friend, and I'd made dinner. I like to cook, and made a nice dinner, and then I went for a walk, which is what I do. Um, but before I left for the walk, I had a big uh, glass of tea, and I had set it on the nightstand next to the bed in the room that I was staying in. So I went for a long walk, and I'm contemplating, do I get back on this path I was on, or do I stay on this path that I'm in? And this path that I had been on obviously involved my children, my wife at the time, normalcy and all that stuff. And of course, not being alone, right? And not being on the street. So I go for the walk, and I was very perplexed. I was very much connected and in communion. I sat down on the bed just like this, and I put my hands together, and I said, "Can I trust this path?" And I was meaning the old path, right?
Okay.
Can I
Okay.
trust this path? And in that moment, when I asked that question, this glass, which was a big tumbler, it was a good sized tumbler. It was double the size of this, and it was one of those thick ones like your grandmother would have, the thick glasses.
Hmm.
It shattered, just shattered.
Whoa.
Boom! It sounded like a shotgun. It went boom like that. And the next
Wow.
thing you know, I got glass and tea all over me. And in that moment, uh, my human kind of went, holy crap, you are definitely beating at a really high vibration. And then Archangel Michael came in, and he said, in the past, present, and future merged. And he said, remember this? Do you remember when the tree next to your house fell in the middle of the night and created this? And I'm talking about like a 60-foot tree at a certain time, in a certain time of communion, a lot like this fell, or a time when the crystals on the ceiling fan came together, or a picture flew off the wall. But he was showing me all these different times they were trying to reach me, right? And so I said to myself, "Oh my God, I'm really beating at a high vibration. This isn't just BS. This isn't just my imagination. How do you explain that?" In fact, the guy I was staying with, who was kind of a fundamental religious guy, he kicked me out because he thought he never spoke to me again. He thought I was, like in witchcraft or something like that.
You thought you were possessed.
Yeah, exactly. And
Oh my
and I would just say too, I don't know how deep I'm gonna go with my experience, but I can tell you straight up, like even going back to that day and that period, that week or two period of time, I think I was in this place maybe a week and a half. I was at that level of connection.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you looked at the superficial, the human, the story, without the energy under it really, or just the story, I was in hell. I was literally in hell by my own choice, by my own devices, and in a vibration of heaven, or whatever you might call that type of experience or level of vibration at the same time. And this went on for the 2 years I was on the street, and maybe another year afterwards, although it lessened and lessened and lessened. So I was operating in a broad spectrum of darkness, in depending on what time of the day, usually at night. Uh, I was operating in the extremes of darkness, and also in the extremes of light at the same time. So it was a pretty wild thing to experience with the human condition and the doubts and the guilt and the shame and all this stuff. But I just wanted to make that point clear. The the
You were in the middle sphere of the shadow and the light, and you were learning both sides simultaneously, which isn't
Yeah,
an easy thing
no,
to process through as a human being. To be, because I had a similar situation when I was in my 20s, and I told you that I was homeless. I was, for 1 year of my life, and not many people know the whole story of it, and it's very private. As you said, you don't want to release too many details about experiences, but I will say this: I went through a year of what you're talking about, the shadow and the light, and I literally was asked verbally by Archangel Michael at the end of it, which path do you want to go? And it
right.
was a no-brainer for me. And he had said to me, because I was literally homeless, I lived in a shelter, I lived in a terrible housing situation. I was with somebody that was on serious drugs. I was being physically abused. I was pregnant. I lived in a shelter when I was pregnant. This was my first child. I went through the year of so much shadow, and I literally held my light during all of that shadow. But as yourself, I feel like I went through that year and processed the dark and the light simultaneously, because I was supposed to be able to, I was going to speed up my evolution. So therefore, I would be on the other side of that, able to help, as you, to be a holding tank with divine neutrality, and be able to see and experience all of it in a non-judgmental way in order to help progress the evolution of the planet. And
Yeah,
so I actually was, asked, which way do you want to go, by Archangel Michael? And my daughter was 1 week old. And I said, that's a no-brainer. I'm in the light. And he said, anytime you want out of this matrix, this story that you're in, this hell, just say the word. And I literally left the situation, and I was out of there within 2 days, never to look back.
wow, yeah,
And all the different things were set up for me to make it super easy. I had a neighbor that took me in when my daughter was 2 weeks old, and then I went from a neighbor to the owners of the apartment building I was living in. They took me in, and then my parents came, and that was it. And I was
yeah,
gone. I was out of there, and it was all systematic within days. I literally was in that situation for 2 or 3 days, and then I was out, and I
wow,
never had to look back. But it was very powerful, and I have very much respect and honor and reverence for that year, because it
yeah,
literally catapulted me to a level that I can't even express to humans. Like, it's really hard to even explain what that year was. And like you, it was so transformational. Like, there's so many things that happened, and things I saw, and things I witnessed. And anyways, back to you.
no, no, that's it. I mean, and this is what I think, retelling these things does, is it somehow or another, it opens up code in people. Or you could say, code can be a lot of things, like courage or epiphanies, that, hey, it's not just me. I didn't, I knew that I'd always been connected, always, no matter what the circumstances were in my life. And in that first 7 months of like there was this intestinal fortitude. I spent 6 weeks, uh, you know, I said there was a 6 weeks period that I was still in my house. Everybody was gone. Everything was gone. No money, car, job, everything. I was being evicted. It was a house owned by family. We had, some serious trauma. We were on welfare. There was some serious stuff going on. There's a lot of stories in there, but I knew something was going on. So what happened was I had this. I talked about this in the last one, I think. So I had this experience with the cosmic Christ, and he told me, tomorrow your whole world's going to turn upside down. And something in me knew it. And he
Hmm.
said, you are the one of the unshakable faith. Now we're going to find out.
Hmm.
And it was a very strong statement, but I took it 100%. I said, yeah, let's go, you know. Something was going on. I mean, obviously this is the period when so many people got, you know, jolted. But but so the next morning, end up going to jail, come out 42 hours later. Everybody's gone. 6 weeks by myself, huddled up in the room upstairs, listening to one song over and over, literally one song, one 2 minute and 42-second song for 6 weeks over and over. Now I'm doing things that I don't advocate for other people to do. I don't know why I'm built the way I am. I'm not saying I'm anything. I'm just telling you the truth. But I sat up in that room with lots of weed, beer, and whiskey, and just wrote a lot, communed in my own way. And again, it was a broad scale, a broad spectrum of dark and light. I knew something was going on, and I didn't have Soulgy. I wasn't on Facebook, but I knew something that I termed at the time biblical was happening. And so I didn't know about ascension. I didn't know there were other people like me. I just knew that I was much more than I am. And and once I left my house, I left after 6 weeks in the middle of the afternoon, and I had the laptop sitting on the kitchen counter, like where the door is. I'm about to go out. And again, it was really strange because the soul knew. The soul was like, hey, game on. Yet here I am as a human about to go into the streets. I got two suitcases, a briefcase, and a box of mementos. You know, and I
Yeah.
and so my humans, like, as you would imagine. So just like
Yeah.
automatic writing, I went to the laptop, and I had Facebook open because I was using it to communicate with some people, right? Like through Messenger. And I
Mhm.
just went to the laptop and I wrote, I'm about to step out into this extraordinary universe with no money, no home, no car, no family, no job, and no kids in the house, no kids in my life for the first time in 23 years. But don't worry, because I've got my heart, my soul, mind, and my balls are as big as Alaska. Now that was me trying to put on, you know, it was sincere, but also you could see the wounded ego. Why would I say balls as big as Alaska, you know? So I went out the door. I walked about, you know, halfway through the parking lot in the townhouse complex I was in. I dropped everything to the ground and I put my hands in the air. And again, it was almost like automatic writing, like when your soul just does stuff. Like, why did I do that? And I said, I am the most blessed soul that has ever lived, to include Jesus. And I packed my stuff up and I walked to a hotel a couple of miles away and got a room for 3 nights because that's all the money I had. The other thing that I think was important, I talked about this as well, I kept hearing Job. And I knew the phrase, the patience of Job. That's all I knew about Job. I didn't know his story. And his story is one where the devil tells God, hey, Job is the most faithful man in the world on the face of the earth because he has riches and he has a beautiful family and a beautiful wife and all these things. And if you took those away, he wouldn't have that faith. And God says, okay, we'll take it away. So that's what happened in the story of Job. But the other part of it is, and this is the thing that I kept hearing, was that everything will come back to you a thousandfold. And that's what happened in the story of Job. So that first 7 months culminated with the glass breaking in my room, right?
Mhm.
And and then I went through, and again, I just want to kind of restate this. I'm having this incredible, unique awakening that is beyond biblical. And at the same time, um, I'm I'm visiting the darkest of the dark as well. Okay. I mean, literally every day. Now,
It's important for people to understand that you have to, that's kind of how it works. pretty much. You have
Well,
to go into the
yeah,
depths to get
true.
back to the light.
Yeah, I think you can only go, as I understood it even then, you can only go, like say you can only go as many degrees above the line as you've been below it. And somehow or another, I was doing both at the same time. So when I say I was in the dark, there was a couple of things. In the physical reality, I was in situations and in places and environments that were, from the human perspective, the grimiest, grittiest, lowest levels, levels to where you're inflicting pain upon yourself, suffering and trauma upon yourself. There was some chemical, I would just say meth. There was some meth, ecstasy, Molly involved, other things. I was dancing every night in the clubs, in the hip hop and electronic clubs, underground parties. So there's a real mixed bag in those types of environments. But obviously, there's an element that a lot of people kind of shy away from. Now, at the same time, I was homeless and I was meeting a lot of homeless people. And I don't know if people really understand, but in the 90s, when Clinton was president, they kind of uh, changed the mental health industry. And as a result of that, many people were basically put out on the streets. So you meet a lot of people that by the old paradigm perspective are not okay. They're mentally afflicted. Having lived with somebody, my second wife, who had that type of burden, um, I knew already being with her that they had sight into the other side. So as I started to meet people, as I was walking the streets during these 7 months, even though I was holding the hands of the devils and the angels simultaneously, uh, I was still carrying this soul presence with me in the darkest moments, no matter what. So when I would meet people, I would look at them as me, basically. I would look for the commonality. I would look for the
Mhm.
soul in them. And some of these are, pretty afflicted people. But so it allowed me to really
You're being
walk the talk.
initiated. Yeah, it feels to me, and this is how I kind of view it for what I went through, is you were being initiated into that Archangel Michael lineage where you were testing yourself to what you would be under any circumstances and how you would perform in the sense of sharing that light and still being true to that light no
Right.
matter what you are around, you know?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it was powerful.
I don't know if I'll ever get into the grimy details, the salacious details, because they're pretty wild. They'll probably
Letting
make
it go
everybody.
sometimes helps, but I know
Yeah.
sometimes it also, I think in this period of time, in this existence that we're in, it's all just a memory. So I don't
Yeah.
think like you said, it can't harm you unless you
No.
think it can harm you. It
Yeah.
only is just a reflection of something you went through,
Yeah.
that brought you to where you are.
Yeah. Absolutely. And when I say I don't know how deep I go, I don't mean today so much. I mean just as I go forward, because I do
Yeah.
recognize the value of it. But if people were privy to the things that I experienced and knowing that I put myself in these situations, I could easily be identified as my family considered me at the time, and they were right in part. Psychotic, neurotic, lost his mind, absolutely. But if I could describe it, uh, if to describe it specific to the human experience, could come out one day, uh, and I could see that happening. And the purpose would be, in other words, you know me as you know me, right? And if I relayed this information to you, you'd be like going, holy crap. Like whoa. Like we're talking like some serious stuff here. No murders and no anything. Although in that first 7 months of the spirit walk at 49 years old, I got into 8 fights, uh, and they were fights. I mean, I got a, you know, I got a nice,
Wow.
I got a real teardrop scar. It's not a tattoo.
Oh,
On
from a knife.
the fourth night, fighting two young 25-year-old muscular guys. Um,
Back in the
but
day when knives were used instead of guns.
yeah, exactly. Thank God. But what I was going to say is there was something that happened that, I don't know how you explain what a conscious, what I would call a conscious dimensional experiences, and I've had many, and I know people have, where
Hmm.
you're not in dream state, it's not lucid dreaming, you're not in meditation, you're actually walking and talking and having
Hmm.
these things happen, like
Hmm.
Jesus's
Hmm.
face coming through the
Hmm.
trees. Like, okay, so there were 2 episodes that occurred uh, at this time that you could not say were human experiences by the typical explanation. And what it was as I got into the second 7 months of the spirit walk on March the 10th, on Morgan's birthday, and I didn't know her for 4 years. I didn't know it was her birthday, obviously, because I didn't know her. I was given the name Sology by Archangel Michael, the other side of truth. Shortly after that, or immediately, I guess, my team went from Yeshua and Magdalene and Archangel Michael to six what I would call prophets. Okay, 6 prophets, 6 aspects. I mean, at that time, I kind of processed information different than I do now, but I realize now that these 6 masculine aspects are my 6 masculine monadic aspects within my own field, right? These were 6, and they all sat with me for 2 weeks. It was Abraham, which was faith, Isaiah, which was kind of like fervor, peacekeeper, and also as a writer, introduced me to helped me remember a method of writing that's got a semantical and geomantical arrangement to it called chiasmus. It's one of those things where you get something, then you go look it up, like, oh my God, it's real, right? Uh, and
Wow.
then there was Noah, which was persistence and thick skin. Then there was Daniel, which was courage. And then there was Samuel, and some of these I knew and some I didn't. It was quite interesting because they
How
would
did
tell me
how
about.
did they how did they come through to you, Todd?
Um, well, they came through I guess you would say sessions. Um, uh, and again, there's a lot of stories in this, and I'm assuming at some point, not that I've been told for years, go write a book, this and that, and shown a lot of stuff, but it, I would just say in sessions. Uh, and then just in the experience of life. But I mean, in terms of like the 2 weeks, um, yeah, I would say through sessions, through conscious meditation, conscious communion, they would come. The other one was Samuel, which was spiritual confidence. And as he's walking out the door at the end of that period, he looked back at me and said, "Oh, and I'm going to show you something else too. That's about music." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, you'll figure it out." And so that was interesting. And then the fourth one, or the sixth one, was Solomon, which was logic and wisdom. So they were involved with Yeshua, Magdalene, and Archangel Michael. So now there's 9 on the team. And so one day, as I'm going through this myriad of experiences of the broadest spectrum you can imagine in the living flesh of dark and light. Um, I wake up and I find myself, and I'm telling you this because it's given you a feel for what happened um, in the physical human experience. Not
Yeah.
verbatim and not literally. I'm just saying, kind of like an abstract piece of art. You can make it with what you pick up from it. But I found myself had fallen in this well, and this well was, let's say, 80 feet high to the getting back out to the earth. And I'm in this well, and I have some people or some energies in the well, which is the devil, and three
So
of
so
his.
you physically fell in a well, or this is
No, this was a parallel experience that was occurring at a conscious in a conscious dimensional uh,
gotcha.
progression.
Okay.
So this is happening to me as I'm walking and talking, but on the ground in the physical, you know how it goes. The energetic produces the physical. Okay. So I'm in this well, and the well is the sides of the well have, like, moisture and algae, and it's slippery. Like,
Yes.
how am I ever going to get
Mhm.
out of here?
Right.
Well, every day it was 1,000 nights. Okay. It was a
Wow.
thousand nights. And
Wow.
for 1,000 nights, the same thing would happen every day. And first and foremost, the 9 guides I had on my team, which quickly became 12, and I'll tell you about that in a minute, but they were looking down the well, looking at me. And I'm like, hey, how do I get out of here? And I'm looking at them, and they're not smiling and they're not frightened. They're just looking at me like, hey, what's happening? You're on your own, kind of thing, but not in a mean way. So every day the cycle was the same. I would wake up, uh, they would come out, I would be raped, sodomized, urinated on, beaten, tortured, the whole 9 yards. I would try to get up the wall, I would slip back down. I was, in this place. Like I said, it was 1,000 nights. And so one one day I was able to climb out, and not very long went by, and I was back in. And that was a big initiation, because I had gotten out, but I had not um, found my power, I guess. So now I'm back in it. It's another 1,000 nights. I guess they don't go less than 1,000 nights. And same thing's happening. So one day I'm laying down there, and I'm, looking up at my team. I'm laying on this cold, uh, dirty concrete kind of slab thing like they have for you in jail, uh, when you're in solitary confinement, which is another story. And and I had this thought, and I thought, wait a minute, hang on a second. I wake up every day, no matter what's done to me, no matter what I experience. I'm not. They can't touch me. They can't kill me. And I come back every day, and
You
I'm in
learned
full
about, it was
power.
learning about a lesson about death, about
Yeah.
there is no
I don't
death.
know. I
Yeah.
just knew that no matter what level of depletion I had, I would wake up every day and I was whole again. So this time the devil comes out, and these 3 minions, and I look at him and I say, hey, you know what? You can't kill me. You can't touch me. You can't hurt me. You can't own me. This is nothing but a thing. And just like that, I went right out, and I was out for good. But that gives you an idea of the level of the physical experience. It's a very complicated story, but it's an important part of the story. So I would go on for another year, have many, many different episodes. I mean, I could literally talk for literally hours and hours, just about weeks, about a week at a time. I mean, so many different things happen. So eventually, I went on for about a year, uh, still on the streets, trying to get my feet on, still living both ends of the spectrum. Um, and it was about a year after I had the visit from the Christ in the trees, right? Um, I was living, I was in an apartment and I got a phone call. And it was my wife at the time's brother. And she had my three children from that marriage. And she was in a very difficult state. She was diagnosed by human standards, schizophrenic and chronic depression. And there'd been a lot of psychotic episodes. And I was worried about my children, but I had no wherewithal. Like, what the hell was I going to do? But I was also having these, this was right in the middle of these sessions and remembrances and visitations, and there were visitations. These were very profound. Like, I can remember sitting in this apartment and having kind of like I'd met all six of the ascendants, and we'd all gotten acquainted. I spent my 2 weeks with each one of them, and now we were in the next phase. And it was a particular weekend, and I'm looking up at the ceiling, and all of this symbols started going all across the ceiling, right? And somebody else was
Okay.
there and actually witnessed it, not right away, but on the second day. This happened over a weekend, and and they were there. They were there in the corner, all
So it was
looking
like
at me.
you were like getting codes, like codes that were
It
involving
was
you.
it was actually Aramaic letters, and they were in blue, and they were flowing across the ceiling. So this was the kind of environment I was in, right? I was still going to the clubs at night and dancing in the dark, but I was having these episodes as well, and both before and after, because every time I would go dancing, I would then spend the next 2 or 3 hours walking through the darkness, going to sanctuary, going different places, and having more experiences. So it was a really diverse kind of expanse of the spectrum that I was literally experiencing hour by hour. You know what I mean?
It was
Even when
like
I
it
was,
was doesn't it appears from your what you're saying that it was a pilgrimage that you would have never been able to have if you didn't have the space of homelessness, to
right,
be totally separated and disconnected from modern day conventional existence. You
yeah,
actually got to go into a reality that was parallel to regular human reality, and you got to actually stay there for
yeah,
a period of time to actually get accelerated learning. And then you got initiated by other servants to truth that came through from other realms to initiate you yet to the next level. But yet you're still going to stay here and you're going to give that back. And then you're giving it back in all kinds of ways through soulology and just all the different ways that you've given back since then. But the
mm,
story that you tell is something that is so extraordinary that
mm,
it's amazing that you're able to put it to words. And I know that you have probably volumes of books that you could write, but I think that the key point and the message is for people to understand, like even my story, which I didn't go through too many details, but like
mm,
that was a year, but like I felt like that was 10 years. Like I felt like from the year of me, that year was 1993. I felt like that I went from 1993 to like 2003,
wow,
2023. Like I literally felt like that experience was not 1 year. Like the amount of things that happened to me, and because I was taken away from my regular life, like I was in a state, I knew no one, I didn't have any
I know,
friends, I was just had my partner who was drug addicted. And so
right,
all the things that I had to experience through that lens, nobody on the earth can verify except for this other person that no longer am connected to, my daughter's father. That was the only person on the earth that can verify that whole thing, that whole experience. It's like my experience, just like you had that experience, and you have bits and pieces of people that were intertwined in it, but it's that experience catapulted you
right,
into realms and understandings that you never would have ever had if you didn't have that time on the streets. The streets gave you a space to
right,
create and become who you are,
right,
as far as right
absolutely.
now in this moment.
1 second, pause 1 second.
Sure.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So it was about that May 30th, 2011, 1:11 in the morning, was kind of like when it started, right? May the 2nd of 2012, which was just about a year later, I get this phone call, and it's my wife's brother, and I already knew what was going to happen. I already knew. And he said, "You need to sit down." And I said, "I already know. I just need to know are the kids okay?"
Oh, she
And
passed.
she passed, right, in a car crash. Um,
Oof.
and again, I could just go to that day and I could tell you everything that I experienced on that day. Um, um, and I could talk for an hour, right? But so that's what had happened. And and so my kids had been kept from me. Uh, I'd always been very close to my children, and so I was obviously concerned for them. I was homeless, and what the hell am I going to do, right? So, but my wife at the time, she came to me after that phone call, and she told me three things, and and it was a pretty powerful thing. And a few weeks would go by, and just more. I mean, there's just so many stories here, but
What
but
was
to
the
just
three things that she told you, if you don't mind disclosing them?
um well, I'll have to back up a second. Okay, so going back to the previous year, the 6 week period that I was in my home before I went to the street, before I had to get out, it was probably because again, there was just, a lot of what I would call divine episodes occurring. It was a huge awakening. It was daily, it was hourly. Well, so my routine was once I got out of jail and I went back to the house, and it's just a big empty house, and it's just like you got to leave, and you're going to go to the streets, and my soul already knew. My human's like going, okay, I guess I could have called family. They would have taken me in. They probably would have put me in the psych ward first or whatever the case was, but I knew that I had to do this alone. And that was the name of the song, by the way, Kid Cudi, "Do It Alone," right?
Oh,
That I
wow.
listened to the 6 weeks. Yeah. So my routine would be that I would, on a typical day, probably get up at noon, get something to eat, just spend a lot of time alone, drink some beer, smoke some weed, commune, listen to the song, and then that night go find an underground club or an underground party or an underground place where I could go dance. And then I would come back. Well, one of probably like about a week after I got out of jail, so say the first part of June, I went out one night with some friends, went dancing. Uh, they dropped me off at the house, and I go upstairs and lay in my bed. And I had a candle lit. I like candles. And now keep in mind, this is a living person. She's not transitioned at this point. This is a year before I was telling you. And all of a sudden, I'm laying in the bed, and in the corner of the room, through the illumination of the candles, you know, casting its light, I can see the figure of my wife at the time. She's she's a silhouette, kind of a shadowy silhouette, no definition of the face, but I knew it was her because you know soul, you know spirit, you know what's familiar to you. And she was kind of flowing, like there was a wind blowing, like just flowing. You could see her, couldn't really see her feet. It was more like a skirt that dropped off, but it was just flowing. And she was speaking to me. And I'm getting chills right now thinking about it. And so she talked to me for about 2 hours, and she just told me that um, she had to leave. Um, she had to leave, that I had something to do, and that I would be, again, this is more metaphoric, I think. Maybe there's some literal to it, but that I would be speaking in front of, just thousands and thousands of people, that I had a message and that you've got things to do. And I had to leave in order for you to do that. And, and
Wow.
so going back to the day that she died, and this is really strange too. And again, I don't remember these things, and I start talking to him and talking about them, then I remember them. So, it'd been 11 months, and I had not spoken to her, um, but maybe 4 times, 5 times maybe. And but now and then she would send me a message, and that message would say, "Are you okay?" And I knew that that message meant she wasn't okay.
Oh, of
And every single time she would send me that message, I would engage her because I cared about her,
course.
you know? So on May the 2nd at 11:48 p.m. my time, she was in Florida. And I got a message from her, and it said, "Are you okay?" And I didn't answer it for the first time.
Oh,
I
wow.
just, I just didn't say anything. And 12 minutes later, she wrapped she wrapped her car around a tree, and and that was the end of that. And
Oh,
and so when she came, she showed me for the first time. She showed me more than once, but she came in and she told me that she would keep an eye on the girls, 3 girls, the 3 daughters, um, and because they were, um, let's see, they would have been like 9, 10, and 14. And she said she would keep an eye on them, and that, for me to I don't know what she just told me she was going to keep an eye on them, and I knew that she would. Like it was that kind of thing. Like I'm here. I'm gonna do my part from this side. And the other two things, uh, I think one of them, because I can't remember the specifics, but I mean, one of them was kind of in general, like, you know what, you're not crazy, you're on the right track. Everything that you're doing, no matter how crazy it seems, you're okay, right? Uh, and I think the third thing was that she said, this is what she said to me. She said, "I can fly again." She used to always talk about that when we were together. "I can fly again, and I'm going to be going into kind of a um, rehab thing for a few weeks, but I'll be back, and we'll be progressing our relationship and working this shit out, kind of thing." And and that was it. So that's what she told me. So a few weeks go by because um, basically her just to give you the narrative part of it, I'm not affected by it, but her her brother, who was the one that called me, basically went and took the life insurance and called me with my daughters and said, with my daughters on the phone agreeing, we're going to stay here with him. He took that money and went and got a bigger place and went and got a new car, and he had my kids there, and that lasted a few weeks before things reached a level that was um, not safe. By a stroke of luck or the universal alignment, I got a call from the insurance company. "Oh, we didn't know she was married. We gave the life insurance to the brother." And I'm like, oh, that's great. And here I am homeless, right? My kids are without their mom. And um, they said, but we do have this policy on the car that pays like $2,500 for medical. I don't know what it was for, but we were going to send this to you. Great. They send it to me, and I used that money to fly to my two youngest, because one I kind of adopted, and then we got together. She was 2.5 years old, and um, and the other she bore. We had together. So I got him back over here. I didn't have a place to live. Um, I was living in I was in Dallas, and I was living in a trailer park. Just happened to be behind it, uh, a big ditch, and on the other side of the ditch was the school. Can you imagine the elementary school or the
Wow.
junior high, whatever
Yeah.
it was? It was a week before school started. I'm living in this two bedroom trailer, helping my friend with his business, landscaping business, and trying to get on my feet when this happened, and still holding hands of the dark and the light, like
Mhm.
extreme.
Mhm.
And so and still having daily divine episodes of both demons and angels. Um, so I got him back, and we slept in a bed together, uh, and I would just put my arms around him, and and I would just I brought him into my world, you know,
Mm.
because obviously they were very traumatized, and I just said, okay, I'm going to introduce you to my world, and at that time I used to start my nights with in the infinite realm of the Father God and Mother Universe, um, Yeshua, Magdalene, Archangel Michael, the six prophets, and my three spirit guides, which was another story. Three, three souls that I had a life with is the Lakota uh, Sioux, and one was my father, Chief Running Bear, who was both a medicine chief and a war chief, and my brother, White Wolf, who was the spirit of my heart, was a war chief, and my uncle, my dad's brother, White Owl, who was medicine chief. Um, so I would call all of them in. I would call all the souls that I had assisted in my consciousness, because in the previous uh, 3 months or so, 4 months, they sent me, I don't know the exact number, but I would say probably 25 or 30, maybe 35 souls that had transitioned, that were stuck. As I understand it now, I would say they were stuck in the astral plane. So they weren't in the fifth dimension. They were still rooted in the astral 3D kind of thoroughfare. These were people that I knew and some that I didn't know. So I would call them all in, and I'd commune, and that's how I would go to bed at night. And so about 5 days into it, I just knew that I couldn't do it anymore. Um, I knew that I had nothing left, and of course, I didn't have anything financially. I mean, the school was right there, and I was doing the best I could, and
Yeah.
but I couldn't do it. So I just reached out to my family, who had been well, it doesn't matter. But I reached out to my family, and I said, listen, I called my sister, who I'm closest to, or was, and I said to her, can you take my girls? And they said yes. And so a couple of days later, they came and got them. And this is not throwing shade on anybody, because I think everybody has to do what they have to do. what they feel is best. And so about a week went by, and I realized that they were going to blackball me, and that all my communication would be shut down, and that what was presented to me, let me get back on my feet, um, you know, wasn't going to be pursued. So I put together $300, and I bought a bus ticket for $250. And I took a bus from Dallas to Houston, and I arrived at midnight. And I took a taxi because Uber wasn't around then. I took a
Mhm.
taxi to my homeboy Donnie's apartment, who's a big influence in my life. And it was, I don't know, 2 o'clock in the morning by the time I got there. And I jumped, his door was locked and he was already asleep. So I just jumped his patio. He's in an apartment. I jumped his patio fence, and because I was used to it, I just laid down on the concrete and found myself a makeshift pillow, and I went to bed. And the next morning, um, he opened up the door. What are you doing here? And you know, I took a shower and uh, got my two suitcases and briefcase, and um, I got on a bus, and I went across town to a place that I had gone to the year before when I was just starting to get back on my feet. The thing happened in May. Around October, I thought, oh, I got to get myself out of this. I got to make some money or do something. So I started selling meat door to door. You knock on the door, someone comes to the door. Do you eat beef or chicken? Hang on one second. I got something for you.
Oh, wow.
You get paid cash every day, but this was a type of job that the people that worked there were the misfits. We're talking felons, we're talking drug addicts, and so on. I remember the first day I walked in there, uh, and I remember walking in, and there was about 15 of them sitting in chairs in this warehouse. And I walked and in this huge light, this golden white light that shows itself to me from time to time, surrounded them and said, "Just remember, you're no better and you're no worse." And but anyway, so I took a cab to this place and walked in the door and said, "Hey, I'm back. Can I go to work?" And they said yes. And I went out to work that day, and I made $45, and I had $5 left over, so I had $50. And I'm in like kind of a rough part of town, so uh, I got my suitcase and briefcase and took my $50 and walked up a couple of, I don't know, a mile or so to this hotel. And the hotel was not like a um, when you see everywhere, right? It was like a standalone mom and pop or something. I don't know, but so it was the craziest thing. It's crazy because when I was on the first 7 months of the Spirit Walk the previous year, I used to stay at a Motel 6 that's on the other side of town by where I live now. And when I could, right? And lots of stories there, lots of stories, lots of stories, um, including 6 cops coming in and busting the door down and taking me another time to jail. Uh, but I walk into this motel, into the lobby, and I said, this girl came to the counter, and she said to me, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Don't you remember me? I used to work at the Motel 6
Oh my God.
over there when you were
Wow.
home, when you were homeless."
Wow.
And I said, and I didn't remember her. I kind of did, but I didn't. And she calls to somebody in the back, hey, so and so, come here. And this other girl comes in that I did remember because she, I think, worked more when I was there than the other one did. And I said, hey, I remember you. And they're like, yeah. And oh, now I remember you both. Yeah. What are you doing here? And I told them, what had happened because they knew my story. Now, what are the odds of having these two angels
Exactly.
appear in this motel a year later on the other side of town in the hood? And I said to them, listen, how much are the rooms? And they said $45. And I said, listen, all I've got is $50. Um, and they said, listen, we're not going to charge you tax. You pay us 45 and you can go next door. There's a Denny's and they have the $2, $3, $4 menu. So that these are the type of blessings and synchronicities and occurrences that happened. And so you can see the impact, I hope, that to be a human being and living this craziness with all this harmony and beauty beneath all the chaos and drama and trauma and PTSD.
Mhm.
And then to have these things happen and you can't argue it. Yet we still doubt and this and that and so on. But yeah, so I went next door and got a Denny's meal for $4 and got up the next morning and got my stuff, rolled back to the meat place and worked myself up from there. And eventually, within a few weeks, I because my friend, my homeboy, he temporarily was able to give me a couch to sleep on. So I went to a wings restaurant, chicken wings bar and grill. You know, I'm 215 pounds, 200, 205 to 215, depending on how well I'm behaving. Uh, I was about 170 pounds at this point.
Wow.
Uh, with all the walking and not eating and so on, and I look back now and I realized that my body was fasting and repairing itself because, I had some incredible things happen with my body that are still occurring, regenerating, I guess you would say. So, but after a few weeks, I walk into this place and I said to the manager, do you need a waiter? And he's like, yeah. So I ended up there and I spent about probably around 3, 4, 5, 6 months. Um, I quickly became, um, a manager. I was the bartender and I worked 7 days a week and I worked my ass off because I've always been a good worker. Loved it, got to meet people. Um, and every night after work, I'd take my tips. I'd walk over to the dance club and drink beer and smoke weed and dance all night long. And when I dance by myself. I never dance with anybody. I just dance by myself. I'm in my own world. That's a whole other story too. But I know this is kind of like, all over the place. But
No,
um,
no, I think something that you just really brought to the light, which is really, really important, and I think is going to continue to be important for the collective, is you're really talking about surrender. And surrender is like what we're really in right now. We have no choice. And for myself and how I've been walking through life in the past, pre October, I could waver. I could be, oh yes, no, maybe.
right.
Now there's no maybes. It's yes or no. It's
I
very
agree.
definitive.
Yeah,
And
I
so
agree. Yeah.
I think that your story of your
Mm.
life and these stories you're talking about are very much about just being and not being. One of the things as humans, so many of us, I can attest to it. It's one of my Achilles heels. And I raised two children alone. So this kind of incorporated this is I always had to be in control because I had to control so much. I had to raise two
Right.
kids and do all the things that, two parents do. I had to do by myself. So what we're learning as a society at whole is to surrender. We have to let go of control. We aren't controlling this. We are controlling what we feel and how we express through our thoughts, and then what we create in our reality, which is from our heart, what we feel. But when we try to hold it, we're just going to continue to loop and loop and
Yeah.
loop.
Yeah.
And if we don't surrender to what is exactly existing right now in this moment, just like me and you have this conversation, none of this was rehearsed. We were
Right.
surrendered into the momentum of the story that the grandest amount of people in the grandest light could get witness and have codes to then break open themselves. And I feel like
Yeah.
each and every one of us, just like me reaching out to you and saying, "Hey, Todd, want to do another podcast?" Part of me, just like you, was scared. I was like, "Oh my gosh," because I haven't done it in so long, and I'm a whole new person than I was in
Right.
October. I'm a way different existing energy. But I knew just in my guidance, in my truth, in my surrender that you stimulating me through those videos the last 3 days was like, Jill, just like Todd had to do those, you have to reach out to Todd. You have to do
Right.
this. And the overlying message is surrender. Like, it's not about me. It's about me in the sense of how can I project the most light and give out the most truth in my
Right.
existence. And
Yeah.
that's through surrender, through surrendering to each moment, and not and the thing that you brought up earlier, which I think is so important, is you, the biggest person of schedules, because of the way that you fabricated your life with your shows. You actually were the leading example, because you said, no, I'm stopping right now. My soul, my guidance tells me right now in this moment, I need to take this time to not be controlled by schedules, by times,
Right.
by shows, by people. And you set the example for everyone, and we're all doing that in our own ways of like, no, enough is enough. I'm
Right.
not going to be controlled by the constant need to do. I'm just going to be. And being is incorporating exactly what the moment gives you, not something next week, not
Right.
something next year, but what is this moment telling you right now.
Right.
And you embody that, and that is such a powerful leadership role in embodying that surrender. And your story from your whole life, it sounds like, or at least your adult life, is completely into that surrender. And now you're going back into, you created some space for yourself to create more of that surrender. So yeah, you're starting back up and you're doing some similar things, but now you have the space to create them in a different way that's more surrendered, less about you're having to control it, but more about you just being witness and being part of it and being it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. You really said a lot there. There's so many elements to this. I mean, when I got that on 11/9/9/11, November 11, I woke up and I heard the pop, and you're all on the other side now. Um, I tend to run. I tend to like take off. Let's go. Rah, rah. Let's go, man.
Sagittarian energy. We
Right.
create, we're fire starters, we're igniters. We create
Yeah,
things. That's what we're here for. So to slow down is like an act of going against the grain of our existence.
exactly. And it
I
took
get it.
about it took about 60 days, but I felt, and I guess it would have been January 11, so 60 days. Um, Around that time, it's like I was waiting for everybody. And I know that sounds like, you know, I was in a place that others weren't, or hierarchical or something, but it's not. I just got it, and I was ready to operate off the new coding, off the 5D plus. I was, leave all judgment behind. I'm 100% compassion, no more bullshit, no more going back and doing the shadow work. And you know, uh, let's get, we're done being mired in the muck. We figured out where we're at. Now let that shit go, homie. and let's be here. And it was about 60 days later, I started to feel like, oh my God, people are finally coming now. So now here it
Mhm.
is another month later. And let's say a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I started to come out, and there's a lot that's come out with it. And
Mhm.
again, there's no structure to it. There's no structure, like even what I've been talking about for the last hour. I'm like, I didn't even know I was going to talk about this stuff. I hadn't even thought about this stuff for a long time or whatever. But even talking about it, I can feel the freeing up occurring
Yeah,
within my own
space.
field, which is also going to be reflected to anyone that might see it. And that's really how what we call healing takes place is I'm going to reflect to you what you actually already are or can do, right? But I think part of what's coming in for me, and I talked about this a bit yesterday on the solo yesterday, um, although it's not what's verbalized literally and specifically, um, there is in my mind a difference between what's going to be substantial and congruent and expansive going forward in terms of doing these types of what I would call expressions, be it a talk show or a solo or whatever. I really feel, and this is not to throw shade on anyone or anything, that the yogi guru teacher is gone.
That's the external eye. We're in the internal eye.
Exactly.
We
The self,
shifted.
this,
We
let's put it
shifted.
this way, rather than take something away, let's say this. It is diminishing rapidly, and I think it will be somewhat uncomfortable and painful for many that are our contemporaries that have specific roles and have had specific roles that have been invaluable to us. But it is a part of the identity that is still connected to the wounded ego in the old way. Self-sourcing, self-empowerment is the only way. So what does this mean? This means that uh, anything that I'm going to be involved with, and I believe as the individual goes, so goes the collective. I do feel, without any comparison to anybody meant, that I'm on the front edge, that Sagittarian part of me is like, I'm at the front edge of this thing. I know I am on the masculine side. I know I am to a level on the creative side and certain other things that I might bring to the table. Um, but no more disclosure, no more conspiracy talk, no more starseed talk, light worker talk. And what I mean by that is, this is who I am. I was so and so in a past life. I can do this. I can do that. These things, I believe, won't carry the impact and the substance that we will magnetize towards as we go forward. That it's
Yeah, 'cause
actually this the strength of it is actually, or the what's been afforded uh is we're no longer looking in the ethers for our answers and our guidance. It's actually been in us all along, and now it's coming alive in us, and that's where we're
embodiment,
operating from. Yeah, and so the embodiment to me, this is
embodiment.
one I got yesterday, which was what greater way to embody than to take everything into yourself? Because if you take everything into yourself and you don't resist it and you don't ignore it and deny it, you've got to go to the truth. And that means that you've got to take your prejudice off this person or this bias off this person or whatever the case is. But what I'm saying is, I don't, I never was really tied to number of views, number of likes, number of people in the community, and all that stuff. I always understood, because of the connection I had, that things are upside down. I know, for instance, that like since I've come back on board, I've been suppressed incredibly because I've gone through it for years and years and years. I know how the cycles work. I'm way down on the algorithms, and it's okay because I understand that the energetic output, whether no one sees me or the whole world sees me, is the same because it's all based on the power that I emit. And I don't, what I'm getting to is I know that these distractions and distortions and narratives, to include those things that served us in the previous 12 years since 2012, in this transition we call ascension, are going to fall away. And the only things that will remain will be expressions and fields of energy that are in alignment with the Trinity energy, which means that whatever I do, I'm serving myself equally to serving you and all of the collective with each step I take. So I just want to say that I feel like that I don't know how this goes for me or how it goes for the collective. But what I do know in my soul is that it's through a 360-degree openness, no judgment, because it may take us time to get there, but it doesn't have to.
Mhm.
The only reason I would refrain from going into the details of my story is 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 really for my own health and well-being. I feel like that, I could probably give every single detail um, publicly, and I probably will. And I've always known that. Um,
Well, I think that the embodiment is being transparent to the every fractal that you are, and standing behind it, and acknowledging that it makes the conglomerate of Todd
yeah,
Medina. And so
yeah,
that to me, the same with me, is I need to be able to speak on some of these very dark shadows,
right,
and be able to talk about them, because people do not understand that what I went through to get to where I am, and all the things that make me who I am, that in order to be able to do the things that I do, and not
right,
in the sense of me by myself, but in the sense of like how I'm able to put it all together and to push it out, just like you do, like how you push it out through
yeah,
soulology. You're pushing it out, and you're able to do that because you do have that transparency. But I think honestly, that transparency will set every single person free. So the very
absolutely,
idea
yeah,
of surrender and transparency into each and every piece of who we are is actually opening us to become that new oneness
yeah,
that we can then show outward. Because if we don't want to even see it and not speak about it, we're not being whole, and we
right,
can't be anything if we're not whole. So it's so important to become whole. And I think you are one of the most outstanding influences in this reality of being your authentic self, and not being a personality, but being all the pieces of you, and sharing that with everyone. And
yeah,
also accepting, and one of the things you said the other day on one of the 3 days that you were sharing, you said, and this is something that I also hope to attain in my podcast and who I am, is I am there for the 99%, not the 1%. So
yeah,
I want the 99% of reality of what exists to be seen. I don't want the 1% to be seen. I want everything to be seen. And so however that shows up, I'm willing to show it and be
yeah,
authentic for every man and every woman, not the collective or the narrative in the sense of
right,
what we see, and in the TV and the news and all that other nonsense, which I do believe is changing. And networks like yourself are the ones that are systematically changing it, because that reality and that truth that's getting through and bleeding through to the collective is then changing the whole root system of the tree, to now allow something pure to grow
yeah,
from it. And that's
yeah.
what you're doing with your show, and what you've
Well,
always done.
I think one of the major downloads I got when I was on the streets in the first 7 months. Um, was one night, like really early in the morning, and there was a lot. I mean, I would say there was probably like say 10 or 12 in that first 7 months that were like really ones that brought me home, like really big epiphanies. And so I'm walking through this park at like, you know, 2:33 in the morning, pulling my stuff, trying to figure out where I'm going to land, and contemplating my present and recent past experience, contemplating my dives into uh, the dark and drugs and environments and situations and experiences that were occurring. Um, Sometimes I would wake up literally and go, "Holy crap, did you just do that?" And I would have to now keep in mind, I'm homeless. I've had this, very successful corporate career. I've been a good father, been married twice, and, all these things. And here I am, it's almost like the surface, like a nightmare. But I never went there. I mean, I cried and I did, my thing. But so that particular night, I was kind of contemplating that. And I always looked at it as the universal speaking to me, and I know it's me now more than ever. And it's kind of funny because you sit down to pray, so to speak, and like I chuckle most nights as I'm walking. I'm like, who am I talking to? But I'm still able to understand that something's bigger than me. Everything is bigger than me. This has something I don't, but it is me, you know? So
Right.
so it's like again, kind of like what I'm being called to do, which is to marry my human and soul voice into one. It's like marrying the inner and the outer into one. So
Mhm.
the voice said to me, "Hey, um, and by the way, when I hear this voice, it's kind of talks like me because it's kind of, you know, makes things humorous and uses curse words. But it said to me, "Hey, I just want you to know that everything you've ever done, everyone in this world will know." And I mean, it sent the fear of God into me. I went,
Oh, wow.
"Oh my God. Oh my God," like, whoa. Like, whoa. And just as quick as it came in and just rocked me, they flipped it and they said, and everyone will know the same about everyone else. There will be no thing that's not known.
And that's what,
And
and that's that what we're stepping into right now, of that telepathy and that complete utter connection with another soul when you're next to a human. And
right.
I feel like that's really coming on, on board.
Well, I think this is, and see, I never really fully understood it. And I think the best downloads you don't understand. They just keep getting better and better. You twist it another way a year later, and it's, oh my God, there's this and there's that. But I never really fully understood it, but I'm really starting to get my grip on it now. And it's very similar to what you're talking about. To be in a place, and this is the common denominator I was talking about yesterday on the self interview. Number three, we all know we have the common denominator of I am soul as a fractal, as a unique and equal fractal of the universal, so on. But I don't think we really understand the value yet. We are, and we will, through our united thoughts, words, and actions, okay, which I consider to be the holy trinity of navigating our life at this point. Uh, when you're in a space where everybody knows everything about each other, let's call it the shadow, okay? All those things that we don't want, because this is how we deal with the universe. I accept you, except this little part over here, let's leave that out. Or let's I want it this way, control, right? uh,
Mhm.
or this part over here that I've done, these god awful things I've done by most people's, let's not bring that out. But what I found was that, and again, you move forward carefully, to keep yourself, intact. Don't get crazy with it. But when when you, I don't know, there's just something about like, okay, everybody knows now. It's like, okay, like the second Sology Fest in Arkansas, right? It's a Wednesday night, 11:45 p.m. I'm running 16 miles from the mountain to go pick up my really dear friend from the airport who's going to help me with the Sology Fest. Last flight into Fort Smith, Arkansas. I get pulled over by the cops. Long story short, I get arrested. 6.5 years ago, a complaint was filed against me that literally was a divine stroke because at every level they're like, "What is this?" It was a misdemeanor, and even the judge just threw it out when they shipped me back to Houston. Uh, but here I am about to do this Sology Fest. I got all these people coming in. I'm already pushing the envelope as much as I can. I'm in jail. Here we go again. The circles and the cycles again. And here I am in jail for 7 days, sleeping on a floor in an overcrowded jailhouse. And somebody finds my mugshot and puts it all over social media. You know, okay. I didn't worry about because I'd been through it before. I didn't worry about what people would think. How many people would say, "Oh, I knew he's too wild, he's too dark," whatever the case is, whatever the case is. But you know, there's just something about tearing the band-aid off. And I think that we've given the shadow lip service. We have done a lot of work and done a lot of shadow work and zero pointing, but it's an all or nothing proposition. So this is who I am. I've done a lot of wild, thrill-seeking, crazy, extreme, dangerous things in my life. But I'm a good man and a good soul and a good father. And there was one thing that happened when I hit the streets. I had several mantras that would come in, and one of them was, "I know my truth, and the universe knows my truth." And that's all that matters. The whole world could tell me I'm crazy and nuts and need to be whatever, but I know my truth, and that's all that matters. And so, just to kind of like conclude it, the um, the thing about uh, trust, well, control. A few nights ago, and I talked about it on the second one, I think. I got this download, and I wrote a little poem to it, or whatever I call that, soul speak, and it was basically capturing this thing you're talking about the surrender, because I think it's hard to find any words for these things, right?
Mhm, it is.
Because that's really a beyond surrender thing. It's like surrender doesn't exist. This is our new reality, right?
Mhm.
It's an all or nothing proposition. So we're like holding on to the deck as the ship's like heading out. I mean, we're going. So it's an all or nothing thing. And again, as I said to Cherish, I think you might be able to relate. I'm just going to
Yes,
jump in
I
and go.
do.
But it's where there's trust, there is no control. And I really feel like that's it. You either trust or you don't. If I don't trust you, I don't trust the universe. If I don't trust the world, I don't trust the universe. If I don't trust, six cops busting in a door in a motel room when I'm uh, an hour into a hotel laying buck naked on a bed, smoked a bowl, have a tall boy beer that I just popped the top on, and just had been living in my car for 7 days. And here they come, you know. Uh, I don't know why I went into this, but I think there is a correlation. So, they come in And first of all, they're knocking on the door and they're saying, uh, police open up. And I quickly put my pants on. Uh, and they say, felony warrant. And I said, you got the wrong room, man. I mean, I'm raising some hell, but I'm not doing anything like that, you know. Felony's a big word. And they said, Todd Medina. And I said, oh, that is me. So I go to the door and they bust it down and I fall down. The door falls on me. My pants are to my ankles and stuff. I get handcuffed. I'm sitting on the bed. My beer's sitting there, not even had a sip yet. Um, they get my briefcase, they dump it on the bed, and my resume falls out. And the resume was a very good resume, you know, national director with, you know, some big name companies that you would know, um, Home Depot, you know, Lowe's, Sears, you know, just a really good career I had. And as I'm sitting there, handcuffed, shirtless, just with a pair of jeans on, they start making fun of me, you know. Oh my God, how did you get to be like this? You know, and you know, how did this happen? And look at you now, and here's the charge, and you did this and you did that. What kind of person are you? And I just immediately went into where I had been for the previous 8 months, 9 months, whatever it had been. And I just started to pray. You know, I just said, uh, they don't know that my wife is sick. Bless them, forgive them. They don't know that my wife is sick. They don't know that what I've gone through. They don't know, um, you know, that I'm a good man. I started blessing each one of them. I blessed their families. You know, and I just turned it into, I just, you know, turned into the I am soul, I guess. And the crazy thing about that, I can't believe I just got off on this tangent because this isn't nothing compared to,
This is about you made a choice to not be in fear. So you made a choice
mm,
to stay in your balance, which we all need to do with these weeks and months coming up where
yeah,
there's going to be
yeah,
shifts. So the message is don't don't fall into fear, because in those moments you could have been angry, you could have been rebellious, you could have been fearful, you could have gotten into a space of what are they going to do to me? All these things could have went through your mind and got you into a lower vibration, which would have then made everything, you would have been able to be controlled in that situation in a different way, where you had kept the control because you kept the balance, you kept your mind
right,
even, you kept your mind
right,
giving them good energy and telling them something kind, and in your mind blessing them, instead of falling into that the paradigm of where
yeah,
things are. And that's kind of a great message for this now moment, is to not fall into that fear, because you were in a state where you had people handcuffing you and you were at the
right,
mercy of people making fun of you and
yeah,
all of this. And it
yeah.
could have really brought up things to make you step in. You were
It's a
being
good point.
challenged about that fear. So right now we need to realize and recognize that no matter what happens to us, we don't need to go into that fear. All we need to do is remember the
Yeah,
love and the kindness, and that people don't know what they're doing. People aren't understanding the things that they're doing in this reality. And we're going to see a lot of people not knowing what they're doing. And we still have to pray and love them and not like get into that level.
yeah, yeah. I think that's a really good point that you bring up, and I'm just sitting here remembering all this stuff talking to you. But
Well, that's good though, because
the crazy thing is this.
that's what we do as Sagittarians, though. We're
Uh,
able to have people pull all of this stuff out, and
yeah,
it's for the whole world. It's not just for you.
right,
It was
right.
for you when you had to experience it. Now it's for everyone.
Well, it's funny that you say what you're saying because I'm thinking of two situations. One, the reason that I was extradited back to Houston from Arkansas for a misdemeanor by a written complaint, by the way, that was totally false, is because of what you're saying.
It's true.
rewind back to 2016, and I had a YouTube incident at my house. The cops came in. They allowed my family to break into my house. They backed up a U-Haul and started loading furniture. I pulled up and had a YouTube incident. I was totally within my rights. I'm filming it. They ended up throwing my camera on the ground and my phone on the ground and it breaks. Uh, they and there was one cop that initiated it all, and I just went straight Todd on him. I called him every name in the book. I told him, I got this thing, and I said, "Dude, bring your supervisor out here." And I could actually have pressed some charges and got something done, even in this unjust system that we're in. But what happened was, a few days later, I get a phone call from the police department that this person had gone in and filed this complaint, which was a false complaint. I'd had enough of the judicial system and the police state to know that, and I just told them, "Hey, I'm not coming in to give a statement." That's what they were saying. "You want to come in and give your side of the story?" I said, "Look, you just come pick me up because I'm not coming in. If you wanted me to come in and you want to book me, I'll be there." "No, no, we just want to get your side." Well, in the process of this guy talking to me, I tell him about the YouTube incident, and I start telling him in a very colorful language about this police colleague of him who broke the law and is a piece of you know what, and so on. And he puts me on hold for about 7 or 8 minutes, comes back, says, "Oh, we don't need anything else," hangs up. Well, what had happened was that other cop that had broken into my house, that's when they decided to come arrest me. And he put in the language of it those stipulations, right? And so, in other words, my reaction, my charge created, even though it turned out perfect and I wouldn't change a thing in the world. Now, just to give you another example of that, that night in the hotel room when the 6 cops broke in, I had, I had, I had drugs. Okay. Now, I'd never been a dealer in my life. Uh, I might buy, some extra weed to reduce the cost of what, mine cost. But I actually had some pills and some powder, and certainly enough to put me in prison for, a few years minimum.
Wow.
So when they dumped the briefcase onto the bed and were making fun of me, that powder and the pills fell out with a bunch of vitamins and supplements that I took. And one cop grabs it and says, "Oh, look at this." Opens the bag, and I'm sitting there going, "Yeah, you know, just the same thing I was telling you. Just kept going with the blessings for myself too. You know, no self
Mhm.
judgment. Just what? Just it is what it is, and I trust. Okay, that's what it really boiled down to. That's what I'm getting at. Trust. Trust is the vehicle. And so as a result, now that you're connecting the dots for me, of the 6 officers that were there, there was one in charge, like one sergeant. This guy, I don't know. He just felt my energy, or I don't know what happened. He asked me if I wanted a cigarette, and he put it in my mouth and let me smoke it. He asked me if I wanted a sip of my beer. He opened the beer and gave me a sip or two as I'm about to go to jail. But the other cops were like, "What's this?" And I said, and I don't even know why I said it. I said, "Test it, test it." I said, "I'm on the streets, and some of it was true. These are vitamins and supplements I had, and I would mix some powders, some legitimate powders like uh, serotonin,
Mhm.
HTP is what they call it. But anyway, there was definitely Schedule 1 drugs there. And the
Mhm.
guy says, "What's this?" And I said, "Test it. It's it's clean. I mean, I just said it just came out. And so he says to the sergeant, he says, we can test it. And the sergeant says, you know what? We got enough on him. Just put it back in the briefcase. Put everything back in the briefcase. I then say to them, look, I'm homeless. All I have is that car down there. And would you mind taking my briefcase and my suitcase and putting them in my car? And a couple of cops were like, F off, dude. We're not doing nothing for you. And the sergeant again says, grab his briefcase and his suitcase and put him in the car. So they
Wow.
put it in the car. Now, the crazy thing is, now again, I'm not advocating the lifestyle that I had, but when I got out of jail 34 days later, which is a whole other, that's like 5 chapters, extraordinary period of time, extraordinary things happen, divine episodes. It was amazing. When I got out and I got back to my car, because you got to remember, while I'm in jail for 34 days, I'm hearing all these stories from the inmates. I'm telling them my story, and they're like, dude, they're not going to just let that shit go. They sent that stuff off to get tested. You're going to get popped for another one. And I knew if that were the case, I would be going to prison for at least a few years. There would be no way around it. So I had to sit with that. And again, in the same way, I never
Process
seen,
and
I've never
just
seen
trust that it's
more.
all going to work out.
Yeah, well, it was, now that again you connected the dots, it was more like holding a state of consciousness or field of energy of trust, no matter
Yeah.
what the circumstances were,
Which is,
no matter what, because the words just, like justice,
mhm.
fairness, forgiveness, uh, even surrender, they don't come with us. It has nothing to do. It doesn't matter if it's circumstance or consequences. This is the situation you're in. Where are you at? What are you going to be? How's it going to affect you? To your point about the things that are coming, which I don't really like to get into with these people forecasting apocalyptic prophecies and so on, and solar flashes and all that. That's still out there. We're here. And the moral of the story is seen in this story. So here I am in this place, in this power, having divine episodes, having things occur to me in jail as well. Uh, but in the back of my mind, going, you could be going to prison. It's one thing to be on the streets. I mean, I can hold my own, but I am 50 years old now, and I know enough about it, not having been on the inside, but I know enough about what I'm about to walk into, and I'm going to have to be something I've never been. I'm going to have to be, you know, hell on wheels. I mean, somebody who looks at you wrong, you got to take them out. Yeah, I mean, this is just the way things work, right? So I end up getting out and go retrieve my car, go to the briefcase, and everything was in there. And again, I'm
It
not
was a
ad.
divine, there was a divine intervention
It
of
allowed me.
your guidance.
It allowed me to get on my feet because I went and moved it real quick, got some money, and then I was back. But the last thing I would tell you about that, because I know we probably better go. When they put me in the cop car and my hands were, handcuffed and, they were about to take me in, I heard Archangel Michael, and he said to me, we are cutting all the ties that bind. Okay. We're cutting all the ties that bind. Now, on May the 30th, when I went to jail, when I had the wake up, when they take you into the jail, they take you to a kind of a temporary jail quadrant before they put you in a permanent part. They sent me to this place. This is May 30th, 2011, when I was in for 42 hours. And so when you go into the jail after you've been frisked and strip searched and the whole 9 yards, They still run you through a metal detector as you go into this temporary section of individual jail cells. So I went through the metal detector. I go to where they put me. I'm on the top bunk. There's a dude on the bottom bunk, and there's a penny in the bed. Now, if you listen to
That's
the
the
one,
angel. Yep, yep.
yeah,
I've listened
so
to the
there was
other
a penny
story.
on the
Yep.
bed. And so what happens? 9 months later, go back to jail, put me in the temporary section, go to the exact same cell, which is cell number 11,
As I told you,
go to
the
the top,
number.
go to the top bunk, go to the top bunk, and there is an effing penny.
Archangel
So,
Michael.
so here we
Archangel
go,
Michael.
right? So,
Archangel Michael the whole way
yeah,
through. The whole entire story, the thread is
yeah.
he's threaded in it. The
Yeah.
whole
Oh yeah.
entire
Oh
thing.
yeah. Oh yeah.
The whole entire thing.
As the 3 or 4 months preceding to the reawakening in May of 2011, I would come through the house because I'm going to come through the house and grab my kids and mess with them. And, I was very, like that as a dad. And all of a sudden, I would just tell them, hey, I served in Archangel Michael's army. I never thought Archangel Michael my whole life. And I would tell my kids, I served in Archangel Michael's army. So that there was that part. Um, and yeah, so um, but back to your point, and back to the point of what I guess I'm getting into with these self interviews. It's not the story, okay? It's not the story in terms of the way we used to view things. Wow, look at him. He did this, or oh, he's a low level piece of dirt. Look what he did in his life, or whatever the case is. It's not like that. It's not like that at all. What I'm experiencing with you, and there's no mistakes, and getting a greater understanding of what I'm getting into now with what I'm doing individually in that regard is to hear the story, but to hear the human side by side, right? Imagine laying in a
Mhm.
jail cell, and then you go in, and the charge that I had put me in the highest category of inmate.
Wow.
So they had this little test, and you can score a 15 max. I scored an 11. And no, I'm sorry, I scored a 12. I scored a
Oh,
12.
close to the
And
top.
12, 13, 14, and 15 is considered the highest risk. So they put me in a cell for that 34 days in a 25-man cell with like 30 people in it. And they were the murderers, the rapists, the whole 9 yards. And so anyway,
I feel
my point
sometimes,
is,
sometimes,
uh,
well, let me just interrupt you for one
yeah,
second and say, I feel like in some ways you went through this for the collective. You went through a lot of these things so other people didn't. And you sharing the story
mm,
is just another version of that understanding.
yeah,
So I think it's really important for you to share that story,
I
those
think,
stories,
yeah,
to continue those stories, because I feel like
yeah,
some of the things equally that I know that I experienced, I went through them so someone else, so many others wouldn't have to. And it's like your energy, it has like a prophetic, you know, angelic. It's definitely, we're both definitely connected to the angelics, like our stories, our paths, the things that we're meant to do and how we're supposed to walk through this human body is connected definitely through the angelics. There's no doubt. I've
yeah.
known that since I was young. But it's not about, like you said, it's not about you. It's about you recognizing and realizing it, through your words and your stories, everyone doesn't have to have that, but everyone
Right.
benefits from that.
Right.
Everyone benefits from what you went through. Everyone benefits from
Oh,
it.
I totally, yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, absolutely. That as within, without kind of thing, micro, macro kind of thing. And I think just to kind of like, conclude it, I think what it is, and I've seen this in Soulgy over the years. So you have people talking about their psychic abilities and skills and awakenings and different things like that. And then, of course, the other side of it, which I think is a big part of what Sology is known for, is the human part of it, where we talk about, the energy came in and it kicked me right in the ass, and I just lost it, and I reacted and I projected, and so I feel like that this is what I'm gleaning from this is the value is, as I revisit these stories, is that yet finding a penny the second time, being there for not knowing how long I would be there, not knowing if I'd be going to state prison or whatever the case is, not knowing if they were going to charge me with the drug thing. Uh, Yet I walk in and there's a penny, and I'm 9 months into this spirit walk, and all of these things are happening, and animals are talking to me, and all this different stuff, and yet I was still taught, laying on this top bunk with an inmate below me, and wanting to cry, shedding a couple of tears, not wanting to be uh, discovered, so I couldn't sniffle, you know, uh, that part was still there. And so I think this is what I'm starting to understand. And thank you for the conversation, because it's helping me to put it all together, is to tell the story, but not just the highlights. It's the highlights and the lowlights that that frees us up. And maybe that's some type of zero pointing. But I think going back to the last thing is, we know the common denominator of our eternal soul. But we're coming to find out the common denominator of our human experience. And although your life or somebody else's life may not have the exact details that it has had with me, energetically, they're the same. Energetically, you had your 1,000 nights in the pits of hell at the bottom of a well being sodomized. Okay. You had your own version of it.
Right,
Yours might have been in the linear timeline for 1 month. Mine might have been for 2 years. It doesn't matter. It could be for
right,
10 minutes. Um,
right.
and the fact that we're in a quantum reality now that is driven by thought,
Multidimensionality. Yep.
right?
Multidimensionality. Yep.
That's right. That
Yep.
means that information is moving in a way it's never moved before. And to your point, uh, things that took one person 2 years on the streets and whatever could take somebody now a month, a week, a day. I've got somebody that I've reached out to that made a comment on one of my videos. I don't know this person, but in the comment they said, thank you. I had this experience. I found you in May of 2022, and I was driving across the country, and I started listening to you, and this just happened to me. I just woke up. In other words, I just woke up 2 years ago, and I'm still dealing with this. So thank you for sharing these self interviews. And I think that's what I'm getting at, is that person, she is seeing the commonality, uh, and ultimately, what does that mean? Hey, I'm really am okay. I'm really not alone. There are really other people like me, and that's going to continue to progress until we reach a point where we feel everything that we project on everything outside of us, right? Like when people have life reviews, when they have a out of body or
Yep.
meditative
Near death.
experience, they have a life review, and the big characteristic of the life review is that you get to feel what your energy impressed upon other people. You get to feel how you made them hurt, or how you made them feel good, or whatever the case is. I believe that the life review atmosphere is our natural nature, and the that's our potential.
Oh yeah.
That's that.
Oh, that's
Imagine
prominent. It's
walking
so
around
right.
and knowing every plant, every bug, every person, beyond lip service, beyond new age BS. you know,
Right.
cliches, that you're actually operating that way. And here's the thing. I don't need, you don't need, we don't need, nor can anyone or anything affect that. We affect it. It's just us. That's it. And we're in this unique situation, literally not, people say walking in two worlds and I'm leaving the old earth. No, we're bringing them together. That's what we're doing. We're bringing our multidimensionality and our humanness into one. And
We're merging it. We're merging it all.
yeah, yeah, that's two and a
We're
half
merging it
hours.
all.
That's 2.5 hours. We're gonna have to, I'm gonna have to
2.5
get
minutes,
going.
doesn't it? It's been a great conversation, Todd. I have to
Yeah.
thank you for your vulnerability again, and just continuing to support the planet. I appreciate all of your communications that you put out, and they're affecting everyone, and I appreciate it, and I'd like to do this again soon. I'd love to
I'm up for that.
collaborate with you again.
I'm
You
up for that.
know,
Yeah, I'm
yeah.
cool. That's one of the things I want to do this year or going forward is to actively be a guest on podcast to bring what we're talking about um, to the mainstream. And I don't mean mainstream as in the big platforms and this, that, just to spread this energy and this reality, the spirit flesh kind of connection and transmission. Uh,
Yeah, and if you want some, if you need any help or you want me to join anything on your network or whatever, let me know. I'm definitely
well,
game to be a part of it.
we're definitely about to do that. We're working on a tutorial today and tomorrow to basically provide for anyone that our existing producers and anyone else, and we've got a list of like over 100 people that want to produce a show originated on the Soulja Network. They'll be able to come in and and there's a lot more to it, so it's kind of hard to get into it all right now. But that was another thing. Soulja Network came to a halt, stripped it down to nothing, and now we're going to rebuild it in this new energy. Uh, a lot
Even
like
if
us.
there's
I mean,
anything else that's not, not even having to be in that kind of a framework,
yeah,
anything you want assistance with or
yeah,
whatever you feel called,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, we've got a lot of people that have made that offer too, but we just don't. It's like I don't know how to explain it, but it's just like it's so weird stepping in this new world because there is no owner's manual, there is no blueprint. There really isn't. We're literally writing the code with each decision and choice and interaction and moment that we experience through our conscious and more conscious awareness. And so, yeah, I appreciate that. And yeah, I would love yeah, keep going with this. I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, keep doing your interviews with self, because I
Mm,
feel like you have at least a few more in you.
yeah,
So we
probably.
look forward to hopefully seeing that
Mm,
if you're so guided.
yeah.
And
Yeah, I
I
think
know me
so.
and you, yeah, I know me and you are going to connect again. How many months it'll be, we'll see.
Yeah, whenever, just hit me up.
All
Uh,
right,
you want to kill the recording? I want to give you some advice.
sure, sure.
Yeah.
How do I just do that without leaving it? Hmm.
Uh, well, don't worry about it. Here, I'll tell you live and it might help other people.
Okay.
So one of the things that I'm going to be putting together, and I've got people
Uh-huh.
helping me with this, is to kind of uh, put together like I don't know what the right word is, but like a course, not a course. It's not a course. I'm just going to provide the material
Uh-huh.
that covers what I've been doing, and I'm talking
Oh,
specifically about a podcast, and I'm talking about
yeah.
everything from promotion to all the little things that I had to learn over the years to make it to bring you to the highest level of efficacy. And
Right, right, right.
one of those things that I saw with you and I see with many other people, and I send them little notes and when I don't feel like I'm being intrusive, is particularly on Facebook, uh, is the preferences that you have on your post. You want to have it for everyone. You go into your settings and your preferences are automatically set on friends of friends. So that means anytime you post or put a video up or any type of promo or anything, uh, if you don't change it, and the easiest way to do that is to change it for all posts backwards and
Yep, yep.
forwards, is to make it for everyone. And you'll see your engagements go up like that because
Yeah, yeah.
it's basically making it public is what it's doing. Public. There's no stipulation. So I saw that and I meant to tell you and you
I
just
actually had it opened and I actually changed it recently for an intentional reason, but
yeah.
yeah, I probably should change that back. I agree
Well,
with you.
if you're trying to build awareness with what you're doing, I think it's. But there are times that you want to minimize it, and the thing is, when you minimize it on one post, wherever you left the last one's where the next one's going to be. So you just have to go in and change it. You can even change it on the post itself, and
Oh, that's
that'll come.
true. That's a good,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
just
that's great.
edit audience. That's it. Yeah. Okay. So I'll look forward to watching this, or I don't know if I'll watch it, but I'll
Yeah.
look forward to it coming out, and I'll share it to all my different pages and platforms.
Okay, sounds great, Todd. Well, you have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Thank you so much for being on. We'll
Okay.
chat
Take care.
soon. All
Okay.
right, bye.
Bye bye, Jill.